This is the powerful, emotional life story of Henry Ford, not just the man who created cars, but someone who built himself from nothing. Born on a quiet farm in Michigan, Ford wasn't interested in farm work. Instead, he was fascinated by machines. From the moment he saw his first steam engine, he dreamed of changing the world with technology. With no money, no connections, and no formal education, he left home at 16 to pursue his passion. Henry Ford was born on July 30, 1863, in the quiet township of Greenfield, Michigan. His early years were spent on a simple farm, surrounded by peaceful fields and a life ruled by hard labor and daily chores. There were no engines or city noise, just the rhythm of country living. His father, William Ford, was a hard-working Irish farmer. His mother, Mary, was gentle, firm, and deeply loving, the glue that held their large family of 6 children together. On the outside, Henry seemed no different from any other farm boy. He rose early, fetched water, tended to the animals, gathered eggs, chopped firewood. But something inside him was restless. While others were content with routine, Henry began to question everything. Why does everything take so long? Why do we have to do everything by hand? Isn't there a better way? When he was just 12, Henry's world changed. One summer afternoon, he saw a neighboring farmer with a strange, roaring machine powered by steam. It moved without horses. It spat smoke and hissed with power. Henry watched in awe as its gears spun and pistons danced. It was like magic made real. That moment sparked something in him. He thought, I need to understand this. I need to build this. I need to change the world with this. From that day, Henry started collecting broken watches, bits of metal, and anything mechanical he could find. By 15, in a little shed beside his family's farmhouse, he had crafted a working model steam engine, on his own, without help, only guided by instinct and obsession. His clothes were torn, his hands were covered in grease, but his eyes were bright with purpose. The neighbors were stunned. How did a boy do this? They whispered. His father didn't share their amazement. He wanted Henry to grow into a farmer. But Henry's heart had already left the fields. Then came the most painful moment of his young life. At age 13, Henry lost his mother, Mary. The one person who believed in him, who encouraged his fascination with machines, was gone. He was shattered, silent for days, refusing to eat, sinking into grief. But in that deep sadness, he held on to her words, "Never stop chasing that light inside you." And he never did. At 16, Henry made the biggest decision of his life. He packed his things and walked away from the farm, not to escape, but to move forward. Toward something bigger. Toward the sound of machines and the promise of invention. He moved to Detroit, a city alive with industry and filled with the clang of tools and the hum of progress. There, he became an apprentice machinist. His days were long, 10 to 12 hours of fixing engines and maintaining machines. He earned just $2.50 a week, but money didn't matter. At night, instead of sleeping, he read books about mechanics, studied blueprints, and built his own parts by hand. No college. No parties. No distractions. Just sweat, steel, and single-minded drive. That was the foundation of everything to come. By the 1880s, Detroit was no longer a quiet town. Smoke filled the skies, machines screamed inside factories, and steel was shaped by fire and force. This was the age of industry, and it was exactly where Henry Ford belonged. While others were busy repairing machines, Henry was thinking about something much bigger. He had a vision that most would consider madness. What if a machine could move on its own? At that time, horses were the only way to travel. They hauled wagons, carried goods, pulled people through towns and muddy roads. If you had no horse, you walked. That was the world. And Henry looked at it and thought, this is slow, expensive, and broken. We can do better. But to most people, the very idea of a car was ridiculous. They mocked the concept. If humans were meant to go fast, God would have given us wheels. They warned him, engines are dangerous, cars are for the wealthy elite, and horses work just fine. But Henry didn't try to convince them. He didn't argue. He just got to work. By day, Henry had a job at the Edison Illuminating Company. He was one of their best engineers, earning a decent salary. But by night, when others went home to rest, Henry stepped into a small shed behind his house, the real factory of his dreams. That's where he built his future, piece by piece. Using his own money, he bought metal rods, tires, gears, pipes, and bolts. He'd work late into the night, sometimes until 3 a.m., covered in oil, hands blistered, back aching. But his spirit never dimmed. What he was building wasn't just a machine. It was a rebellion, a dream, a belief in motion. Finally, after years of secret, relentless labor, his first vehicle was ready. It had 4 bicycle wheels, a small engine that ran on ethanol, no steering wheel, just a lever, and no roof, no doors, no reverse gear. It was awkward. It looked like a baby carriage with an engine. But it could move. And that changed everything. On a summer day in June 1896, Henry, now 32 years old, stood with a friend beside the shed. The car was too wide to fit through the door. So what did he do? He grabbed an axe and smashed the wall open. That's how badly he wanted to see his dream hit the road. And when they rolled the machine out, it sputtered, coughed, then roared. And slowly, it began to move forward. Henry's heart pounded. His eyes filled with tears. "It moves," he whispered. "It really moves." That day, he drove his strange little machine through the streets of Detroit. People gawked. Some laughed. Horses panicked. Dogs barked. Children screamed. But Henry didn't stop. He was driving history, and he knew it. Later that year, Henry attended a private dinner, where he had the chance to speak with none other than Thomas Edison. Henry nervously described his vision, a simple car, affordable for the average worker. Edison listened, then suddenly slammed the table with excitement. "That's it. That's the idea. Electric is too heavy. Your gas engine is the future," he exclaimed. That moment lit a fire in Henry that no failure could ever put out. By 1899, he had found investors and launched his first car company, the Detroit Automobile Company. Finally, he had a factory. He had workers. He had backing. On the surface, it looked like success. But inside, it was falling apart. The cars were too expensive. Too fragile. Production was slow. Henry kept redesigning the vehicles, always trying to improve them. The investors were furious. They didn't understand his obsession with quality and simplicity, they just wanted quick profits. After 18 months, the company collapsed. Henry was devastated. No car. No company. No support. Everyone around him said, "We told you, he's a dreamer, not a businessman." Most people would have walked away. But Henry Ford was not most people. He returned to his shed. No investors. No team. No fancy tools. Just determination. He studied what went wrong. He simplified the design. He rebuilt the engine. He started over. And this time, he had a plan, to create a racing car so powerful, the world couldn't ignore him. That dream became the 999. It was a beast of a machine. No hood, no frills, just raw steel, fire, and 80 horsepower. It looked more like a cannon on wheels than a car. And in 1901, at a race near Detroit, the 999 crushed the competition. It left other cars in the dust. The newspapers called Henry a genius. Investors came running back. The dream was alive again. But Henry had changed. He wasn't chasing approval anymore. He had one mission now: I won't build cars for the rich. I'll build them for everyone. And that mission would change the world forever. By 1914, Henry Ford had become a household name. His Model T was everywhere, on farms, in towns, on dusty roads across America. His factory was producing more cars than any place in the world. He had transformed transportation from a luxury into a necessity. But something else was quietly changing too. Henry himself. By this time, Henry Ford was worth over $100 million, an unthinkable fortune in those days. With that kind of wealth, he could do almost anything. Buy land. Hire armies of workers. Build entire cities from the ground up. But success began to shift something inside him. The same man who once questioned everything now started believing he had all the answers. He stopped listening. He resisted criticism. His focus sharpened, but so did his pride. Some called it drive. Others called it arrogance. But one thing was certain: Henry now ruled an empire, and he ruled it like a king. In 1917, Ford began building something the world had never seen before, a mega factory that could do everything from start to finish. It was called the River Rouge Complex, built along the Rouge River in Dearborn, Michigan. This wasn't just a car plant, it was a city. It had its own steel mill, its own glassworks, a rubber plant, an electricity station, a railway, even its own hospital and police force. Raw iron ore would arrive by ship at one end, and fully built cars would roll out the other. No one had ever created anything like it. Henry wasn't just building cars now. He was building the machines that built the machines. But behind the walls of River Rouge, something more complicated was brewing. Henry became more reclusive. He gave fewer interviews. He avoided big public appearances. Instead, he poured his thoughts into a newspaper he owned called the Dearborn Independent. At first, it was just his views on business and society. But soon, it turned darker, filled with bitter opinions, harsh judgments, and controversial ideas. People started whispering, "Is he still a genius, or has power changed him too much?" Then came a storm Henry never saw coming. Two of his earliest investors, John and Horace Dodge, the Dodge brothers, filed a lawsuit. They accused Henry of keeping too much profit for himself and failing to honor their share of the company. It became a national drama. The newspapers devoured it. The public watched as the people's hero battled two powerful businessmen in court. And in 1919, the court ruled in favor of the Dodge brothers. Ford would have to pay them millions. Most men would accept the ruling and move on. But not Henry. Instead, he made a radical decision. If the court say I have to share this company, then I'll make sure no one else owns it. He and his son Edsel Ford launched an ambitious campaign. They would buy out every single investor, every last share of the Ford Motor Company, so the business would belong 100% to the Ford family. No more board meetings. No more outside opinions. Just Henry's word. In a matter of months, they succeeded. It cost over $100 million, but Henry had what he wanted, full control. At the heart of this story was Edsel, Henry's only son. Now grown, Edsel was the company's president in name, but everyone knew his father still pulled the strings. Edsel was everything Henry wasn't. Soft-spoken. Artistic. Forward-thinking. He loved stylish car designs. He wanted to grow the company internationally. He believed in elegance as much as strength. But Henry disagreed on almost everything. They weren't yelling at each other. But they were clashing, in silence. Henry wanted strong, simple, black cars. Edsel wanted color, innovation, beauty. Henry believed in one idea: if it works, don't change it. Edsel saw the future speeding up and wanted to evolve. But no matter how hard Edsel tried, his father rarely listened. Meanwhile, competitors were catching up fast. Chevrolet, Chrysler, and General Motors started producing cars with new features, better designs, and more variety. The public was excited. Ford, meanwhile, was still pushing the same Model T with the same design, and only in black. Henry had once said with pride, "You can have any color you want, as long as it's black." Black paint dried quickly and kept costs low, but customers were getting bored. They wanted more. Sales began to drop. Henry ignored the signs. He refused to change the Model T. He insisted it was perfect. But deep down, even he knew the world was moving on. Then, in 1927, something shocking happened. Henry walked into the River Rouge factory and shut it all down. He ordered the assembly lines to stop. He told workers to dismantle everything. The Model T, his greatest creation, was finished. It was the end of an era. Over 15 million units had been sold. It had changed the world. But even legends must make room for the future. Now, father and son would work together on a new car, the Model A, sleeker, faster, more modern. But building it wouldn't be easy. And neither would the relationship between Henry and Edsel. Because while the Model T had made history, the struggle to build what came next would test everything they had left.